Welcome to the RnBe.
Somebody said Young Justice. That would be cool if they brought Young Justice back.
I can see that.
Jonathan and Damian Wayne start Young Justice. Who would? Okay.
Totally.
If they were going to bring back Young Justice with Jonathan and Damian Wayne, who should be the third?
You know what the third should be? The RnBe podcast that we're going to start recording.
No, serious
Welcome
question.
to the
Serious
RnBe.
question. Who should be the third?
This is the podcast that Rob and I record every week over on Twitch on Thursday mornings and bring to you on YouTube right here on Saturday mornings. The RnBe G.
Take these things off.
You're G.
Well, you got to take
I
your
am
glasses
G.
off.
Yeah, you're G.
I'm totally G.
You're
What?
totally G? OG?
I'm
Double OG?
So today's topic is going to be rather
G.
simple.
That's my new nickname. I like it.
Today's topic is going to be Rob and I discussing how we would reboot Marvel. This was a topic that Rob and I discussed that we would talk about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But news happened this week that we needed to discuss before we can discuss our theory crafting.
All right, here's a question. Is it a reboot or a relaunch?
Well, we're going to discuss that in a minute.
Yeah.
Marvel has announced that they are starting fresh, starting new. And the primary people on the front of that are Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man. On
Yeah.
top of that,
It's
DC
literally
announced a
called
bunch of cancellations.
Fresh Start.
So we'll
That's
talk
what it's
about
called. Okay.
this. We'll talk about the real news for like 15, 20 minutes. And then we're going to say how we would reboot Marvel. Okay? Similar to how we said we would give a year without Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like this speculation.
So from what I'm reading, Legacy is not ending. Legacy is going to continue, but the Fresh Start initiative will also start. So comic books are now going to be double numbered.
Okay, that's not uncommon, though.
No.
They used to do that with Fantastic Four and Thor. Okay, so the way they used to do it, if you go and you pick up I can't remember exactly what it was, but you pick up some Thor comics.
Yeah.
What it'll say like 5/112. And that would mean that it's the 5th issue of the current volume, but like the 112th issue overall.
Right.
It was a way to basically say
Okay.
it was a way to say
Okay.
like here's like Marvel's done soft reboots, so they would do like a soft reboot with a character, change their history or something like that, and that would be the start of a new volume. So they're basically saying here's the 5th issue of the new volume, but here's the 112th issue overall. It was a way to try to keep the numbering in check.
Right.
You know, it's something they used to do back in the 90s and the 80s.
I thought I was.
I mean, honestly, when they were talking about renumbering, that's what I felt like they should have done. Was just do like the slash numbering. I mean,
So it's the Fresh Start initiative. That's what they're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
What I find to be the funniest thing ever is, okay, so what you don't know is recently Marvel's gotten a lot of backlash. Okay, we're not really going to go into why, and that's not what the topic is. We're not the long story short, and we're not going to discuss the reasoning. And
2017 has been a rough year.
Marvel has decided that they wanted to try a bunch of fresh initiatives. There's a bunch of theories and stuff going around, but basically what they did do is they swapped out most of the primary characters of the Marvel Universe with young or diverse heroes. Okay?
Right. Okay.
There's been some people liking it. There's been some people against it. But the fact of the matter is their sales have been tanking. They've
Right.
still been...
No. They're still outselling DC.
Well, I was
Right.
about to say, they're still technically outselling DC, but through quantity instead of quality now,
Right.
while DC's
Okay.
getting revered across the board.
Well, DC also lowered their price too.
Yeah.
and that's
Okay.
what makes the difference. But
Okay.
but you also have to take things into account. Like DC lowered the price, but Detective Comics is $2.99 instead of $3.99, which is what Marvel comic prices are. And you get Detective Comics twice a month, and then you get Batman twice a month, meaning you get Batman and Detective 4 times, like once a week. You know, so I mean, the issue is Marvel. Yeah, Marvel's publishing 59 different comic
Right.
books.
So what it comes down to, though, is they're still the leader, but
Okay.
not for the right reasons. Not because everyone's saying how amazing the stories are. Some people love them, some people hate them. But we're not here to discuss that. We're not here to discuss the reasoning or what's going on. We're
Okay.
here to discuss that. So basically, at the end of Secret Empire, Marvel decided, okay, regardless of what's going on, sales are not where we want them. You know, they should be they're the #1 movies out there. Marvel should own, without a contest.
A lion's share of the market.
Right.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Right.
Like, this shouldn't even be a contest.
Yeah, it should be huge.
So Marvel has said we're going to fix that, and they did the Legacy. And Legacy was them saying we're going to bring back stuff you love, we're going to bring Marvel back to what it was, but they didn't. They brought back some of it. They changed the numbering of the comic books so that they all reflected the old numbering.
Yeah, they basically treat it as if the original numbering never stopped.
Right.
So
And they moved forward, and they changed some things like the Venom situation, but other things like Iron Man stayed the same. It was a young black female Riri Williams.
Right.
So they kept it. Well,
Okay.
at the end of the year, the editor-in-chief of Marvel stepped down, Axel Alonso, and a new guy stepped up. And the new guy has now, just as of Wednesday, or Tuesday, because it was the day you guys did the podcast for the Weekly Poll.
yeah, CB Cebulski.
Okay. So what I'm saying was Tuesday he announced it, right?
Oh yeah.
They announced the new Marvel Fresh Start Initiative.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah, they announced it earlier that day because we were debating
Yeah.
on whether or not we were going to do a podcast episode on Black Panther, and then they announced like we're doing Fresh Start. I was like, well, we got to do the podcast now.
Yeah.
like we got to do something. We got to get in on this.
So basically, Marvel has decided that they're doing the Fresh Start Initiative. Now, there's a little confusion as to what this is. It's not a true reboot. It's basically the current era, is what I would like to say. It's the current, because they never really reboot.
Marvel, here's a problem. All right. Let's say, for example, that you come to me, Gary, and you say, Rob, I want to read Spider-Man. Where do I start? Marvel would tell you, start at all new, all different, amazing Spider-Man. Well, the problem is Peter Parker's head of Parker Industries. He's a billionaire. Well, how did Peter Parker become a billionaire? Well, then you got to read Superior Spider-Man. Well, if you want to know how Superior Spider-Man happened, you got to go back and read Spider-Man Big Time. You got to go back like 4 or 5 years in order to be able to pick up with a character. 10 years. In order to be able to pick up with a character and understand what's going on with that whole publication and grasp what's happening. That is the beauty of a reboot. The problem that you have with reboots is it's very difficult to start a reboot and then maintain the status quo for any measure of time.
Yes.
That's been DC's problem. DC rebooted because their continuity was confusing. Within 5 years, it was just as confusing as it was before they rebooted. So, I mean, that's
typically every 5 to 6 years, DC does a soft reboot. They roll things back, they get rid of some things, they fix up their continuity. Marvel's never done that. They have the rolling continuity. Everything over the last 60 to 70 to 80 years has been in continuity.
Interesting.
They do very few retcons, very few changes, and when they are changes, normally just adding to the story as opposed to removing anything from the story.
And they'll leave it to the reader to figure out when things happen. Every once in a while, they'll throw in dates. You know, for example, like right now in Infinity War, Infinity Countdown Prime, they establish it's 2018 when that story happens.
Yeah.
So they give you that, but then like there won't be any dates. Like they'll have covers like when Obama was elected president. So like that dates that comic.
Okay.
But for the most part, it's just this takes place at some point in time. And your job, is, if you want to, is to figure out when it happens. Most people don't care. They just read the stories for what they are.
Yeah.
But
So regardless of all that, Rob and I were discussing that all the arguing and fighting, the reasoning behind the theories and the conspiracies about what Marvel's doing and the people who are arguing against it, it's a whole argument about alt-right versus alt-left and all that other stuff. And I've stayed out of 99% of the whole thing because it's comic books. But anyway.
It's fictional characters.
Yeah.
They turn into giant monsters and rampage across Earth.
And they always get retconned back either way.
It's weird.
But so anyway, regardless of what the argument actually is, we're not going to go into it. It's we agreed on that because we're not having the political argument on the podcast.
Right.
Regardless of what's going on, we agreed Marvel's in a point where they should reboot. Well, they just said they're going to be doing that. So
are they definitively rebooting?
They're not rebooting. It's the usual Marvel thing, you know.
Yeah.
So what they've shown now is they're bringing back Iron Man, they're bringing back Thor, they're bringing back Captain America.
But they were already doing that. The current story in an Iron Man is the hunt for Tony Stark.
Right.
So we know he's going to come back. Like the hologram of Tony Stark.
You know what I think it is? I don't think that made enough waves. I don't think bringing back Cap, stating the death of Thor, bringing back Odin's son, and the search for Tony Stark made large enough waves for them to be like, they're like, no one's aware we're doing this. Like, they're coming back.
That's why I say they need to reboot. It would be the first time in the history of Marvel Comics that happened. It'd be huge if Marvel Comics rebooted. Like, if they really want to make a name and they really want people to notice them, then say, like, we're restarting our continuity from scratch. Like, what if I came to you, Gary, and I said, like, if you said, hey, I want to read Spider-Man, then I'm like, okay, start here. And like, this is his origin. And then it's just when he first became Spider-Man. Like, you don't need to know anything else. You can treat it as if Marvel's never published Spider-Man before and start off with that story and understand everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of, like, discussions, when people are talking about back in the day when Dr. Octopus took over the body of Peter Parker, you might be left out on that. But in terms of understanding the continuity of what's going on in the comic books, you don't need anything else. That's all you need to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So we're going in that direction with it. Now, I mean, we wanted to talk about that before we come up with our theories, how we would do it. Because luckily, we can still theorycraft it because they've said nothing.
Yeah.
I've gotten 2 emails from Marvel since this started. We have Venom #1 coming out.
Yeah.
It doesn't even say who Venom is. It doesn't say, because Venom's one of the more bigger things. Everyone in the 90s loves Eddie Brock, but around the late 2000s to the early 2010s, we brought in Flash Thompson, and he's got a huge fan base. I am a huge fan of Flash Thompson.
Yeah, I was actually talking about that with a buddy of mine. I was like, there are people who don't like Eddie Brock.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people out there want Flash, and it actually kind of makes sense because the story was so good.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, they're announcing Venom #1, which first I'm like, what do you mean Venom #1? You just did that whole thing. You just did Venom #1.
Yeah, we're 7 issues in
right
now, and you're relaunching.
We did. No, we're not technically. Now we're technically at like 161 or something like that.
Okay, my ass. We're 7 issues into Venom.
And I think it's 11 issues. I think it's 11 issues now.
Is it 11?
It's like 11 or 12.
Okay, I don't know. We're less than 20 issues in.
But basically, yes, we're less than 20 issues in. We're Venom #1, and they didn't even say who the Venom is.
Yeah.
They just said Venom #1's going to be a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, keep in mind the Marvel Legacy Initiative started in October.
So we're getting a new initiative already.
Yeah.
Okay.
They also announced the second comic that came out and said They said it's going to be Black Panther #1. And I'm like, aren't we currently in the middle of a story?
We literally are. He's dealing with a coup d'etat in Wakanda. People trying to conquer like him and remove him as king. That's his story. And his sister's back. And it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm actually on board with it. Remember, I was against it.
Yeah.
But yeah, here's my argument real quick on the Black Panther comics. I was against it because I think individually it's hard to read that. But when you read them in volumes and the story just flows through, I'm like, this is gorgeous. I love this.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are some stories where they're so complex that, like, especially Marvel, because they release their stories monthly.
Right.
So they're so complex and so much goes on in one issue that by the time the second issue comes out, you've forgotten. And if you forgot about the whole series in the first place, that means you've got to go back and cover 5. Like what was it, Thor? Like the death of Jane Foster is going to end in 2 months. I forgot what happened in War Thor.
Yeah.
It's happened so long ago.
I feel like she's
7
been
months
dying
ago.
for like 9 years now.
Yeah, but that's one of the other bigger drawbacks. Is that Marvel's been getting a lot of flack because people basically just forget about them. Because DC's like, we're going to keep you, we're going to keep us in your minds all the time. So like the most popular heroes get stories every 2 weeks. The least popular heroes are the ones that we're not really going to gamble on yet. They get a story once a month. And then that's it. But like Batman is every 2 weeks.
Yep.
Superman's
actually
every
every
2
week.
weeks. Yeah, it is
they
every week,
rotate Detective and Batman.
That's right, they rotate.
So you're getting 2 different stories, but every week you're getting a Batman book.
So every week you get a Batman, and every week you get a Superman book. Every other week you get a Green Lantern book. Every other week you get a How's One of the Green Lantern book.
I think Flash is the same thing.
Flash is bi-weekly, yeah. I mean, like DC's constantly there reminding you that they're making comics, and the stories are really good. Marvel's like, here's Thor. We'll see you in a month. And that's it.
Well, it's been like, the argument I've said that right now the comic industry needs to adapt to the current day and age. We're in a day and age where you get media like that. You're in a day and age where I can go out and I can buy so many things to entertain me. We're in a day and age where you get TV shows and we're used to binge watching Netflix.
Yeah.
Like The Punisher comes out, you watch the whole show.
Yeah, I watch the whole thing.
You don't wait a week to watch every episode. And I think DC's moved in a direction that reflects that. I know you got to keep in mind art is difficult to draw at a fast pace.
Yes.
But they've moved in a direction where you don't forget Batman.
Yeah.
You don't forget the Clayface story that just went through.
Oh
you
my
don't
God.
forget the Oz effect because it just happened so recently.
It did.
Like and the stories are rolling out so quickly that you can't forget what's happening if you're following along. While with Marvel, Thor's the best example. She's legit been dying since the beginning of 2017.
Yeah. It's so Jane Foster becomes Thor.
Right, I know
But
that.
Jane Foster has cancer. So every time she transforms into Thor, it wipes the chemotherapy out of her body.
Right.
So when she transforms back into herself, it's like she never had chemo. And it was a way for writer Jason Aaron to basically put like a clock on her. And to say this clock counting down, and when it counts down to 0, Jane Foster will die. Like that's the way it is. It's basically a way to keep her from being immortal. So, but that's been going on for a while, really ever since she became Thor.
I would
Like,
say
it's been going
the
on for a long
storyline
time.
versus the Shi'ar gods. I want to say that was where it really became prevalent.
Yeah, when
that,
she started, like,
that we're
nose
coming
bleeding
to
and all that
the
stuff.
end of her.
Yeah.
And that was around the beginning
Right.
of 2017, if I'm thinking the release cycle of the books, because War Thor was 4 issues, and then the War of the Shi'ar was before that. So it was towards the beginning of 2017
The
that
Shi'ar
started.
War was like 6 issues.
Yeah.
So 10 months is about how long it took for those 2 arcs to finish.
That they've really been like, okay, you are coming to the end. Because they've
Yeah.
been building up that she's going to die, but we weren't getting more of a definitive date.
Yeah, I would go with
Okay.
that. So early 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go with that is when it started up. Yeah, but that's one of the big kind of issues that they're running into at the moment is Marvel, because of the fact that their stories are released so intermittently when it comes to a character, because it's released monthly, they make themselves forgettable. Now, that was the standard 10 years ago. It was the standard 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It was the standard until DC changed it.
Okay.
And said now the new standard is bi-weekly if they're really popular. And I'm with Benny on this one. I think that because of the fact that I'm just like, okay, so like I want to know this and I want to know it now. And I don't want to wait.
Right.
Marvel's just kind of like...
You're
well,
the most impatient person I have ever
I
met.
know. But Marvel's like, well, you have to wait. It's like, well, you know what? Then I'm just not going to read your story.
Right.
I'm just going to go read DC.
As much as I give you crap for your impatience-ness, though...
Impatience.
Impatience in this. I'm adding this to the end of this. I made up a word. As much as I give you crap for that, that is the day and age. Even I get impatient at times. Like, how often do you like, I just want to do this now. I don't want to wait. I want to watch the show now. I want to watch all of this show right now. I don't want to wait for a weekly for the show to come out. I don't want to see what's happening in a comic book. I want my video game now. Give me the early access beta that is broken, that I don't care how broken it is. I want to play it now so I can bitch about it.
Yeah.
My wife and I finished Flash season 3 on Netflix.
Yeah.
And so we just tried to like, I don't know. I don't think it's illegal to like try to stream it elsewhere online. That didn't quite work. So now we're watching Supergirl just so we can run into the Flash. We're like, we just want to see more Flash. Like, that's the only reason we're watching this.
But what I'm
That's a
saying
good
is,
reason.
Yeah, but I get it. I get that like impatience. Like, we want more right now.
so
Yeah,
since we
let's
don't
give it
have
right
really
now.
anything to talk
Yeah.
about with this Marvel relaunch other than they are doing it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, I think so how would we do it then? Because that would be the first thing I would do. I'd be like, Marvel, from now on, we're doing 2 Spider-Man books. This week is going to be amazing. This week's going to be Spider-Man. This week's going to be amazing. This week, and we'd start putting it into the DC pattern. You know
That's
what I mean?
exactly what I would do. I would copy the DC pattern. So when New 52 launched, DC was just like, here you go.
Okay.
Everything, you know, and it was, I mean, they were, you know, it's like stagnated out.
Right.
So they didn't reach 52
Right.
comics in a month.
Right.
But the idea was that there wasn't like waves, so to speak. Like there was no real patience or organization behind it. It was just comics that were being released.
Okay.
The idea with DC Rebirth was to look down and say, okay, how can we create interest? Like, how can we create anticipation?
Right.
Like, sure, we could release a Justice Society comic right now, but why not build up hype for it? Like, why not get people interested? Like, sure, we could release a Martian Manhunter comic right now, but why not build up hype? That's one of the things that they kind of realized was there has to be, like, a goal. There has to be a target 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road that we're working towards.
Yeah.
Whether it's a consolidation of all the, you know, continuities we have or whatever the case may be. But you have to give the reader the feeling that when they read your comics, they're going towards something. That it's not just
Okay.
a story
Right.
with Batman.
Yeah. Right.
And so because of that, like DC Rebirth works in that way because it all goes towards a singular goal. The Watchmen coming back, probably
Yep.
some crisis, you know, something along those lines. What Marvel has is just kind of stuff that's out there. It's just a bunch of writers. Marvel feels like Image. It's a bunch of writers who are writing comics that may or may not have anything to do with each other. And the only real
So
unifying
it's very episodic.
Exactly, and the only real unifying factor is like the Avengers.
Okay.
You know, but it doesn't feel like a cohesive universe. Just because you read something in Amazing Spider-Man doesn't mean it'll have anything to do with Iron Man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it has like every once in a while, but people
Right.
want to feel that huge, you know, involvement and continuity. If Spider-Man's off doing this, then he shouldn't be off doing that while he's doing this. It doesn't
Right.
make any sense
Right. It doesn't
to be
make-
in two
yeah,
places
yeah.
at once. So,
Right.
honestly,
They've done a good job of answering that with the DC Rebirth.
Yeah.
Where they explain how Batman's getting around and how it's linked together and things like that, which
Yeah.
is something I think Marvel needs to carry over as well. We need
Dude,
to get more
that's-
explanation.
That's a cool thing. So Christopher Priest is writing The People versus the Justice League. And the whole gist of the story is what happens when Batman has his own events in Detective Comics and his own events in his solo series and like Trinity and all these things. What happens when it all catches up to him? Well, then he fails. He screws up. And when the Justice League screws up, how bad can it be? Well, it could be disastrous. And that's the story. It answers the question of like all these things Batman has going on. What happens when it all catches up? It works.
What happens when
You
he
know.
stops sleeping?
What happens when he stops sleeping? Yeah, he's running on like 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know?
seriously.
That's
That kind
literally
of
the
thing.
plot. No, that
Yeah,
is the
it
plot.
is.
He's
That
like,
is the plot.
Yeah.
like how much you've slept 4 hours in 4 days, Bruce. How are you pulling this off? I
Yeah.
got this, you know, and then he
Yeah.
messes up.
Right.
He messes up, yeah.
Yeah.
He gets a nun killed. And it's really cool. Like it's really interesting, but it's a cohesiveness thing.
Right.
You know, a question's not answered here, but it's answered there. Marvel needs that. Marvel needs a kind of cohesive feel when it comes to their comics. Like this is a shared universe.
Yes.
You know, it's not just a bunch of heroes you know. And so I would literally do it in phases. I would say, okay, like
Right.
you got to start off with the most popular ones. You
Right.
know,
Well, that's what I was
Spider-Man.
gonna say. Like, if we're gonna launch, we're gonna do the every other week thing.
Yeah.
So we have Tony Stark, we have Cap, Steve Rogers, we have Odin's son Thor. You
Yeah.
know, we got Peter Parker. Go with the movie Avengers team. Throw Parker in it though.
Yeah, I mean, well, use the MCU Avengers characters.
Yeah.
that's what people want to see.
Yes,
I mean, like I've been
absolutely.
reading comics forever, whatever. But Marvel isn't making comic books, or at least shouldn't strictly be making comic books for the fans who have been reading for 30 years.
Right.
Marvel should be
There's
making
a whole
comic
new
books
audience
for
they have now.
Exactly. They have to make comic books for those fans
Yeah.
as well as new fans. And so, like for me, I'd say it makes the most sense to take like the MCU Avengers roster plus Black Panther.
Yeah.
And then
No,
Spider-Man.
I mean,
and
take the
roll
MCU.
in. Yeah, the MCU.
Give a comic to each MCU character and extra character. You know,
Yeah.
like Winter Soldier. Give him one. He doesn't have
Well,
he doesn't have a movie, but he's
they
in them.
they try that, and there was the Man on the Wall, and it wasn't very good.
No, what I'm saying, the Man on the Wall was him in space.
Well, yeah, it was.
You've
was
seen the Winter
interesting.
Soldier movie, right?
No.
Okay, the Winter Soldier
haven't.
movie is about a blackout like soldier who
Okay.
got brainwashed to be an assassin, and he
Okay.
was the best friends of Captain America.
Yeah, Bucky.
Right, Bucky,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
eventually he'd break him out
I
of it.
know, I know like who he is.
Okay,
But I've never seen.
the,
I didn't
the
see
comic
movie.
they recently tried with the Winter Soldier is he was the man on the wall, the guy that prevents top secret space invasions from happening in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. He was a monster hunter. It's basically what he was. Okay. But it wasn't that great. I kind of enjoyed it every once in a while.
Yeah,
but
no,
it wasn't
same.
that great of a.
Right.
But so here's my idea though, and I want to get you right. So we're starting fresh, right? For some reason, Marvel has decided they have nobody who knows what they're doing, and they've come to Benny, Rob, and Gary, and they're like, "You guys seem to know comics. Gary, you seem to know how to run a camera.
Reboot our universe.
So we're gonna start off with I would say the first 3 months, just MCU books. Those heroes with books. And then here's my idea though, because they want to keep their diverse characters and their alternate characters, and I am all for that. But start off with the MCU books and as a backup related to it. So for Iron Man, Tony Stark, 22 pages, and then a 4-page Riri story.
We got that with Bendis.
Well, what I'm saying is start it fresh with that. Of her working with Tony, going on her own adventure. Very much how All-Star did with Duke. Duke got his own story before getting his own book. He did. It was called The Cursed Wheel.
Yeah, I could see that.
So do that for the first 3 months. Nobody, you don't give Miles, as much as I love Miles, he's not the Spider-Man in the movie. So you don't give him his book right away. You do MCU characters, you start peppering in Miles in the back, and then once we get past the 3 months, then we try a book alongside.
Well, no, I mean, I think that can work. I mean, I think giving Miles his own story can work. I mean, it's the Green Lanterns versus Hal Jordan the Green Lanterns.
Look, I mean, we can go with some of them. Like Miles is hugely popular, so he can work.
Yeah,
Let's go with the Wasp though.
I would not give the Wasp her own book.
Right, but what I'm saying is, what if we had an Avengers book that was every other week, and and Janet, of course, is going to be a primary character in that, and as the backup, it's her going off with the new younger Wasp, Nadia. And then as it gets to the end of the arc, it spins off into a Nadia book, which is going alongside the Avengers book.
Well, but what you're describing is more of a relaunch than a reboot, because a reboot is set it back to square one.
Right. Well, do you want to reboot? Okay, so let's do the Marvel style. They would never reboot, so we have to relaunch.
Well,
I think maybe they should reboot.
Well, they tried that with the Ultimate Universe. That was their closest attempt ever at doing a reboot.
It was, but it wasn't. It was designed to be just like, okay, Sal said it best on the Weekly Pool. It was designed to be stories over there. Like, it's just, here's some stories with characters that you know, and they exist over there. And then it got really popular.
Right.
And then they were like, okay, so let's keep this going. And then it got really unpopular, and then it got popular again, and then it got unpopular, and then it got canceled. So
the only problem I have right now, and this may be where Marvel's coming from, I think we can't reboot.
Why?
Because we're at a point where they have garnered a certain amount of fans from the movies, and people are expecting the movie universe if you're going to reboot.
I don't know if they're expecting the movie universe. I think they would expect recognizable characters.
And I feel like they would expect it to match with the movie universe.
Right. I mean,
we would have a Phil Coulson. We would have a Nick Fury.
Yes.
We would have Samuel L. Jackson trying to build up a team.
But see, I'm not against that. I mean, okay, like
well then, do you want to reboot or do you want to relaunch? We'll start from square one.
I would say reboot.
Okay.
Like
so how are you going to
Marvel.
Yeah,
this
Rob.
is Marvel wiping it all away.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay. It doesn't have to necessarily revolve around the MCU, but it does need to involve like characters from the MCU.
Yeah, and I think it needs to tell the story the way the MCU does. Like a fluid continuity, I think, is what people expect.
That's exactly it. Like people want a unified series of stories.
Yes.
I would literally just take it all the way back to square one. So you've got Iron Man, you've got Captain America, you've got whoever else, Black Panther and Thor and so on and so forth.
Right.
And you literally go back through. Now, in terms of, I can think about it in terms of individual characters, like Thor, for example. One of the best aspects of Thor was back when he first got his own, actually, I think it was Journey into Mystery. Stan Lee wrote the main story, and then Jack Kirby wrote and drew a backup feature that was called Tales of Asgard. And all that did is give you, the whole background of Asgard before, Thor became Thor.
Yeah. Right.
And it explained how he lifted his hammer for the first time and all that kind of cool stuff. It was really, I mean, it's old stuff, but it was cool stuff. That's what I would do. It kind of has to be world building, exploring, all that kind of good stuff. I would literally go in that direction. With Iron Man, it's how Tony Stark became Iron Man. Just a 6-issue.
So you're saying start from the beginning, origin stories.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. Now, ideally, what I would do is it would be for the first few months, it would be 0 issues. Like Iron Man number 0, Captain America number 0. I wouldn't do what DC did and do a 0 month a year after the whole thing launches.
The 0 month could have been interesting, filling in gaps. It just wasn't that interesting. That was the problem with it.
But I would say give them new whether you're retelling the old origin or what have you, it would just be issue number 0. It would be 0 issues for however long, and then you start going into issues 1, issue 2, issue 3, how the Avengers formed. Captain America acclimating to life in the modern era. Thor showing up on Earth. And you can grab stuff from the Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, Thor was more grounded. So he didn't really have his traditional hammer. Instead, he had a tech-based hammer, is what that was. And it was given to him because he was a guy that showed up on Earth claiming to be Thor. Eventually, somebody realized he was telling the truth, and so on and so forth. But like that would be that whole scenario. Like I would literally just start with origin stories and then start going in the direction of telling like how they became the superheroes they became outside of the origin stories. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like how how their stories would progress. But that's what I would do because people need a fresh start. And that was a failing. The New 52. The problem with the New 52 wasn't that it was a reboot. That was not the problem with it. The problem was the direction they went in.
They had no
after
plan.
they rebooted. Yeah, they had no plan. The direction they went in after they rebooted. Okay. Yeah, that was a problem they had. It was okay. We're gonna reboot. All right, cool. What do we do after that? Well, I mean, Superman will become like Doomsday. You know.
Well, no, the problem with
stuff
52
like
was they've even said how they did it. They're like, they were doing a storyline where the Flash altered the timeline.
Okay.
And they just sat down one day and like, what if it changed everything? And they're like,
okay.
And that was the birth of a reboot of your entire universe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Just having a few drinks and being like, what if everything changed? What do you mean, man? Like, all starts over. So we're going to go back to square one? No, man. We're not going to go back to square one. We're going to do it like 5 years after square one. Why would we do that? Why not do that?
Why not? No, okay, but see, it has to have a single. Like right now in DC Rebirth, the goal, the target at the end of the range, what they're shooting for is they're saying, okay, we've done all these reboots over the course of our publication history, hard reboots and soft reboots and so on and so forth. We shuffled up our continuity, everything's changed. All right, we're going to consolidate it all.
Right.
We're basically going to say, here is the timeline of DC's continuity. That was, at least from what I can tell, will be like the end goal of DC Rebirth. And then after that, who knows what'll happen.
Right.
But Marvel's never rebooted before. It's always been a linear continuity. So there has to be a tangible goal. And the question is, what would that tangible goal be? Would it be a storyline? I mean, would Thanos get the Infinity Gauntlet back or something along those lines? I don't know. You know, that takes some time, at least more time than we, that's outside the scope of this podcast. But like that has to be the point, is there has to be a goal where all this stuff is heading towards.
It's a thing called Infinity War. It's 10 years after they start.
We've done Infinity War and Infinity Gauntlet.
Side note. One thing that these movies have made me realize, as popular as Marvel is, there's so few like huge events apparently, because we have to jack names like Civil War for 14 people fighting.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Okay, Civil War. How would you prefer it? Name a different event that would have matched up with what happened in that? Because that was a Civil War.
Oh, that matched like with the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
what would you name that story instead? The movie one, not the comic book one.
Okay. The movie one. I mean, I wouldn't have called it Civil War. I would have called it Captain America 3.
Well, I mean, that's what it was.
Well, no, I mean, but I wouldn't tack Civil War onto it.
Right.
Like, I mean, if I had to, it would just,
I would just call it Captain America versus Iron Man.
That would work. I mean, it was really more of just like a disagreement.
Yeah.
In the Civil War.
Captain America disagrees with Iron Man.
Captain America fisticuffs.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So let's go back to our reboot stuff. So, Rob, you've been given the reboot. You've done your 0 issues. You've done the first 6 issues. Who is your roster at the start? Is it only MCU guys? Are you bringing in some extra characters? Like, does Wolverine get a book? Does the X-Men get a book? Are you going to introduce the X-Men right away? Because that's a big one.
That is a big one.
Honestly, because you're rebooting tomorrow. You don't have the Fox deal at the moment, Rob.
Well, I'll tell you what. If Marvel needs me to reboot their universe in a day, then Marvel's fucked. Like, I have no idea what to tell them. Marvel's out of luck.
Yeah.
They are so screwed. they're in such bad dire straits. I probably wouldn't even help. I'd be like, look, I don't know what to tell y'all. Y'all need to go.
I don't want my name on that.
I don't want my name on that shit.
Exactly.
No. Okay. The cool thing about Marvel, and this is what I will give Marvel over DC, is the world building aspect. Mm-hmm. All right, now a lot of that's because I'm not as familiar with DC as I am with Marvel, but for me with Marvel, it's one of those things where everything happens at the same time, on the same Earth, and it does, but then sometimes it doesn't feel like it does.
Yeah.
But even though you still know it does.
Right.
Like, I like that feeling. Like the X-Men. The X-Men are usually always, like, kept in-house. Like, hey, look, you stay away, we stay away. Unless things get really bad, then, like, come over here and help us out. But, like, unless that happens, like, we just keep it all in-house. That's really kind of how their whole thing goes.
So how would you handle the X-Men then? Because I'm assuming your 0 issues and first 6, those are your main Avengers.
Okay, I would
so
start
you got your
out.
Iron Man, you got your Captain America, you got your Thor. You've introduced them. You've introduced a Hulk.
I would go back to the original core X-Men by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So Iceman, Beast, Angel, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. And I would give them 0 issues. Give them origin stories.
Individual or
you
like
can-
an X-Men?
Maybe. Well, it depends. I mean, that's because to me, I feel
Wolverine
like,
can hold one. I don't know if Beast can hold a
Wolverine
solo.
can hold one. Oh, I mean, they have the origin in like the solo, the origin solo
Yeah, but
series.
how many times has Beast had a solo book that's run for more than a miniseries?
Okay, then what you could do is you could okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you could offer.
Hold on, Gary. Would you read a story about a big blue furry guy, or if we're going back that early, a guy who's not big blue, he's intelligent with giant feet?
Yeah, he wasn't. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Originally, Hank McCoy
What?
did not have blue fur. That was the result of a lab experiment. Like originally, he was just a guy with like giant feet and giant hands, and he was super agile.
Would you read a book about a guy like that?
Yeah.
boring.
Whenever you get a chance, go look up like the original Hank McCoy. He just looks like a giant.
What's your
ape.
power? I have giant hands and giant feet.
Yeah.
And he can use it like a monkey.
Yeah. I could punch you really
I
hard.
guess that's kind of cool. I mean,
Like my whole fist will cover the side of your head. It'd be fun.
that could be useful in situations.
So if you don't give them origin stories individually, then like the first arc would be like the origin of the X-Men. Like I don't know if I'd give them a 0 issue. Maybe I would just for the sake of having the continuity of everybody having 0 issues. But whether I did or didn't, I would tell the story of how the X-Men formed.
Right.
And then as a backup feature in each one of the stories, like it'd be a 6-issue arc. I'm sorry, a 5-issue arc. No, we do 6 issues. And then the backup feature for each one of the issues is an origin for the character. Maybe it's a 10 issue, maybe it's 5 issue, maybe it's double size and it's a full comic book origin for each one. But it's the origin of Professor X, then the origin of Cyclops, the origin of Jean, so on and so forth, yada, yada, yada. And literally just build up the X-Men that way. I mean, I feel like backup feature origins would work. Even if it's only like 5 pages.
I'm going to pause you right there
So much.
and go to our newbie.
This is so much.
As I say, I can see your brain absorbing, which is why I'm pausing him here.
But
how would you do it with only your knowledge of the MCU at this point? Is it from the beginning?
How would I do it?
That's actually a good question.
Because
Yeah,
you're
right.
Because
Yeah.
you're who they're
represent the
targeting
average
for the most
viewer.
part.
Yeah,
Because they
absolutely.
know us. We're
Yeah.
going to buy their books no matter what.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
we want to shit on it or we want
Right,
to read it,
exactly.
we're going to buy that
Especially
book.
if they rebooted, I'd buy the hell out
That's what I'm
of it.
saying.
I'd be excited.
So we'll come back to Rob. We'll pick up on his thing in a minute. What would you do? For some reason, Marvel has gotten your phone number. Like, Gary,
Yes.
we hear you had great ideas for Batman with Benny and Rob. We want you to reboot Marvel. We don't trust them.
I would say, are you sure? And so one, I would start with a total reboot. I wouldn't do fresh start. Just sounds like a deodorant. Like
It's called the Fresh Start Initiative.
Fresh start. Okay.
Yeah.
It just sounds. Anyway,
The
that
Marvel
aside,
deodorant.
I would rebrand a little bit,
Marvel's
maybe.
new fall event of
Yes.
2018, Old Spice.
Old Spice. Fresh start.
Fresh start.
You just see Terry Crews makes a muscle and like
Yeah.
the Avengers fly out.
That'd be amazing.
Can somebody draw that for me in a
please,
fan art thing?
yes.
Terry
Yes.
Crews just Marvel.
And then post it on Twitter and tag us and Terry Crews on Twitter. That'd be amazing.
Well, I would. Okay, yes, I would start with a reboot, total reboot. It would be one continuous story, one fluid, continuous story, because I think that's just what modern audiences expect.
Yeah.
You know, even going back and watching old Star Trek, like I have a hard time. I know, this mic.
You're talking over it, not into it.
I know. Am I really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That should
talking
be
into
easy.
it now?
There you go.
Okay.
Now you're definitely
Okay. But even like going back and watching old episodes of Star Trek, like I have a hard time because there's some sort of continuity, but not really.
Yeah.
You know, and they're
Try to follow the
they're
next
also
generation.
You can't.
Yeah, the episodes
but it
don't
was-
build on each other.
They don't.
Yeah.
They really don't. The later series get better. But anyway, I would one continuous story, and I would have these characters interacting with each other on a regular basis, so that you can expect it. You know, you don't feel like you're like it's a novelty when Captain America appears. You know, with alongside Iron Man.
Right.
He's just not the main character for that issue. But this is also somebody who doesn't read comics.
No, that's what we're
Talking.
looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, I would just start fresh. I would write these stories for the 21st century, with like, you know, Iron Man's origin. Maybe he's not in the Middle East this time, or whatever I think his original origin was what, like
Vietnam.
Vietnam. Yeah,
Was it
exactly.
Vietnam?
The original
I
was
think
Vietnam.
It was. And I'd write it for the 21st century. 21st century settings, issues, and you know, things like that. And I don't know. Beyond that, that's a really tough question.
I mean, it certainly takes a lot of thinking to flesh
it does, yeah, because
this one takes a little bit more than what happens if Batman goes away for a year.
a lot more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're rebooting a whole universe this time.
right. Yeah, rebuild the universe, Gary. Go.
It does, yeah,
Okay.
it does work.
And make sure people like it.
Your job is on the line, man.
Yeah.
Like, we gotta let you go.
Okay.
No,
Let's move on to the next question.
Yeah.
And the one that,
Right.
that I guarantee at least half the audience watching on the YouTubes and the Twitch are going to ask.
Yes.
What would you do with the diverse characters? Let's take Miles out of that equation because he's been around forever now. Okay, but let's do the Riri, the Nadia, the Amadeus Chohawk. I
mean, I would go back.
Young Cyclops, I guess you could kind of count.
Okay, I would wipe away the young X-Men. They're gone, and they're never going to be seen or heard from. Okay.
I don't know anything about them.
You don't want young Jean Grey with old Green Jay?
It was this
Jake?
this weird ass story. Okay, originally Cyclops was like by the book. I
Right.
believe in Xavier's dream, and I'll follow it to the bitter end.
Right.
And then over the years, they started making him into a bad guy. And so eventually he gets so lost that Beast goes back in time or something like that and grabs the younger X-Men and brings them to the modern day in hopes of like reminding Cyclops who he used to be. And he's like, don't give a shit. And like still goes to be a bad guy. Like still stays a bad guy. And then eventually dies. I would get rid of the young X-Men were a plot device that just never went away.
Okay.
And so I would get rid of them. They would be gone forever. So it would just be the original X-Men.
Okay. But you still have all these diverse characters, which Marvel does want to have out there. They want to have a younger audience.
I would keep them, and I would literally have them there. I would probably treat them like the Teen Titans, to be honest. Like I would make them
I would agree with that, yeah.
I would make them into sidekicks, then give them their own team book.
Yes.
But the overall gist would be we are writing these characters in a way, and we're going in the direction so that eventually they will most likely replace these superheroes.
Yeah.
When they do is anybody's guess. I mean, it's 50 years, 100
And the Teen
years,
Titans have
who
not
knows?
replaced anyone.
Yeah,
for
they
60
have
years.
that.
Exactly,
But like you literally you start building them and designing them in a way to where like the reader looks at them and says, okay, so like if Tony Stark got shot in the head and died, Riri Williams would be his replacement. Like that's how you view her as a
Treat
character.
them like
as she's
they're
written.
like each one is an apprentice. To,
Exactly.
To the
Now, whether or not they replace them is based on what direction the writer wants to take it in. You know, but it's kind of left to the writer's discretion.
Okay.
You know. But I mean, you know, that's and that would be my the other thing that I would establish too, and I would take this back. The other rule would be no killing superheroes. Like, or if you do kill a superhero, they stay dead.
Yeah.
Like that would be the editorial rule. If they put me in charge, I would say if you kill a superhero and bring them back, you're fired. And then that would be the rule. Like I will fire you for that. Like do not kill them and bring it back because it cheapens it. Yeah. It makes it significant.
Well, ever since Doomsday killed Superman, deaths have been meaningless in comics.
That's exactly it. And like like time travel cannot be used as a plot device to end a story. Like you know, like I would go through and make
no
up rules
cop
like
outs
that.
basically.
No cop outs.
You'd have a list of no cop outs.
Yeah, a list of no cop outs. Like if any one of these appear in your story, like that story will not be received, and if it has to be delayed, then it has to be delayed, and it's going to be on your ass if it is. Like that's how I would run it. Yep. I would run that ship tight. You know,
right. That'd be kind of funny. Just Rob like goes to I can just see you going to the editor's table. He's like, this list. That is every cop out I consider a cop out of comics. None. Yeah. I want none of that.
And if it slips through, it's on your ass and it's on the writer's ass. So like, don't let it slip through because if it slips through twice, you're fired.
And
so,
why are those the cop outs? Because I've seen them in like every year at least one story.
At least one story. Yeah, you can't use the cosmic cube to fix everything. No. You know, and I mean you can't. You know,
you can't be like it's not. It is the real Captain.
Yeah.
It is the real Captain. I haven't done nothing weird.
No bringing Captain America back because he was actually a dream. In the real world now.
I just want to interject with them taking over for the heroes. As the average viewer, I would not want the cheap like cop out of Iron Man's dead, so she takes over. What is her name?
Riri Williams.
Riri?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's literally her name. I know.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
I just call her Ironheart because I got tired of saying it so many times.
Riri.
Because after a while it's like
it's Iron what? Iron what?
Ironheart.
Ironheart's her
Okay.
character name.
Great.
No.
I would have gone with like Iron Maiden or something. That would have been cool.
Well, yeah, you know what the funny part is?
What?
Everyone agrees with you on that one, literally
Really?
stating Iron Man was great. They went with Ironheart, and it's a Japanese porn.
Is it really?
You didn't know that?
No.
Ironheart is a Japanese porn spoof of Iron Man.
I feel like Bendis had to know that. I feel like there's no way Bendis
Look it
couldn't
up.
have known that.
Or don't look it up.
I'm not
look
gonna
it up.
No, I'm not
don't
gonna
look it up.
I'm not going to look up an Iron Man
I'm
porn.
fine with our heroes actually being replaced. I mean, you can carry along these heroes for, I mean, we're looking at another, how many years before it's 100 years that these characters have been around?
30 years?
Exactly. That's not that long.
No,
We've
we're
had
looking at
100 years of
we're
some
looking
of
at
these
like
characters.
22 years actually.
Exactly. And so having these new characters is probably a good idea. And I
years,
wouldn't
yeah.
want them to come in because characters are dying or they became evil or none of
Oh,
these
100
cheap
years. Yeah, we're
storylines,
looking
but-
at longer than that. 30, 40 years.
Okay, but
yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway,
yeah.
I wouldn't want a cheap storyline, for like Tony Stark to just die and that's it.
No.
Just
The
take
Tony
over.
Stark one. Side note: the Tony Stark one's the worst because they killed him, but he immediately came back as an AI who acted just like Tony Stark.
the AI
I called him Blue Smurf Tony Stark, and not only did he act
Then he
just like Tony
hates
Stark,
the AI.
not only he also created an algorithm so that he could get drunk. So the blue AI Tony
Are
Stark
you kidding?
was getting drunk, and no one acknowledged he was an AI. It was just Blue Smurf Tony Stark. Everyone talked to him like he was Tony Stark.
Now, my thought is he was supposed to be Tony Stark.
Yes.
And Brian Michael Bendis killed Tony Stark
Yes.
in Civil War II.
Okay.
And then people were just like, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do now?
He's in all these other storylines.
We'll turn him into an AI, I guess. I don't know.
So my original thought is that you get rid of these characters in a way that makes sense for real life.
I would have Stark retire.
Exactly,
Yeah.
retire. Maybe Riri like starts her own company, becomes a billionaire, and it's like this push-pull competition between her and Tony Stark. Eventually, he just admits that she's better than he is at almost everything, and he just because that's what we want for the next generation, right? Is that they're better than we are at pretty much everything. That's what I want for my daughter. Like you're better than me. That's what I want you to be.
See, this is
And
actually
so-
an interesting, really interesting. What you're saying is a really interesting viewpoint.
Yeah.
Because that's the argument for the new heroes. That like legit
Right.
is the argument for
Is
the new
it?
heroes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the opposing argument, since Marvel has tried this whole thing, is
Okay.
no, we want the classics. Give us new superheroes. Don't let them replace.
Yeah.
I can see both happening though.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a new hero. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if you want them to be replaced, bring in new characters, but replace them in a way that isn't just a cheap like cop out. Have the original
go
hero
with
just
that.
say, "Hey, you're doing great. You're actually doing better than I did. I think it's about time I retire, and I'll help you out when I can."
See, I find it really interesting
know-
that's your viewpoint because you are the comic noob. Your
Yeah,
experience
I
in
am.
comics is the movies.
Yeah.
And what you've seen in this office since you started working here 6 months ago.
Right.
Like you were literally the fan that I think Marvel has been trying to target for the last 2 years. So let me ask you this.
Okay.
Okay? Because what you just described is what they've been trying to target for.
Okay.
So why haven't you not picked up a comic if you've enjoyed the movies?
I'm just busy.
Well, no, I mean,
Really, honestly,
No, that's-
I have like
that's actually a pretty good
I have
question.
1,000 books that I haven't.
I'll say
even
this
read,
isn't a
so-
trap question. This
Yeah,
isn't like
yeah.
I'm being like, well, why haven't you done it?
Yeah.
Right.
No, this because
What would
you
make
did-
me take?
Right,
would
because
actually
what you've
make
been
me pick it
describing
up?
is what Marvel's been trying to do: create a new generation
If-
so that you feel like you can
Honestly,
jump on board.
if the movies tied in with the comic books, I would pick up
Which
the
has been
comic
my
books.
argument since the beginning.
Yes.
Okay, I would-
Because for me to feel
This
like
discussion's taking a really interesting turn.
For me to feel like I can watch the movies and get everything I need, and that's it, and there's nowhere else I need to go to get the rest of the story.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick up. Why would I pick up a comic book? I got my version of the story from the movies.
That's a point that I made. The
Yeah.
MCU is entirely self-contained. Inside the
and that's
MCU, you
exactly-
get the
yeah.
origins of the characters.
Right.
You get the powers of the characters. You get their their surrounding figures.
Mm-hmm.
Supporting characters. Like you know what they're capable of. Like you get their whole struggle. You don't need to read the comics to know who they are. And
Right.
it's. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say they were the most popular. They are now in terms of the comics. Like some of the most popular characters. It was kind of a gamble. But like if I say Gary, like where is Thor from? Like where does Thor live?
Where does he live currently? Or
Well,
where
no,
is
I
he
mean, like
from?
where's Thor from? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if Thor had to call a place his home, what would home be?
Doesn't he live with like Gary in Australia or something like that?
Well, it's,
What's the guy's name?
mean, Midgard.
Oh,
There's a spin-off series of telling where Thor
it's
was during
Gary.
Civil War.
yeah.
And
he
moved in with a roommate.
Daryl, that's
he moved
what-
in with
yeah.
a
Dale.
roommate.
No, it was Daryl.
Okay.
It was Daryl. That's
Daryl.
what it was. Yeah.
Daryl.
And
And
he's
he
just
had-
like, hanging out like,
yes.
Daryl, we need to change out the groceries.
Yeah.
And he's like, he has a meeting where he's with Banner, and he's like, so has Stark called you at all? And he's
Yeah.
like, hasn't called me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Stark calls Banner, and he's like, hey, he's right here. You don't want to talk to him?
Yeah. Just blowing off Thor. Yeah.
And I do actually agree with the original point is like we don't have to get rid of these characters and we don't have to replace them. Like don't replace Iron Man with another Iron Man or Iron Girl or whatever. Just I'm actually personally I'm ready for new heroes. I'm ready for new characters. There was a time when these characters were all brand new and they did really well. I think we can come up with new characters,
Yeah.
in the same universe.
But
and
would
just
you
keep
want
expanding
Ironheart
it.
book, or would you want Iron Man with featuring Ironheart? Because that's what they've tried. They've tried making new superheroes.
Okay.
Okay. But the problem, in my opinion, is instead of giving them a book, you're shoehorning them into another book. So
Right.
somebody, like you're going to buy Iron Man, you open it up, you find Ironheart.
Right.
Well,
That's
okay.
not what you're expecting.
But the counter argument to that is, well, if the stories were good in their own solo series, people would read them. But that's not true.
No.
Like, just because a character has a solo series and the series is good doesn't
They
mean that
already
people are
have
going to read
enough
it.
to read with the original heroes.
Well, that's exactly it. Like for example, Black Bolt is an amazing solo series, but it's doing like shit sales. Ultimates was an amazing solo series, but it's got shit sales.
Yeah.
Just because it's a solo book doesn't mean anybody's going to read it. They might read issue number 1, but it takes 6 issues for a story to complete, and then it takes probably another 18 to flesh out whether or not you even like that character. So
Yeah.
it takes time in order
does.
to make that work. Now,
Marvel's been doing YouTube clickbait.
Yeah.
well, now Marvel's failure is Marvel will sit down and they'll say, okay, here's a solo series, and it'll get 6 issues in. They're like, not selling, canceled. And like that's kind of crappy. You just hand it over to a different writer and see if a different writer can do something interesting with it. You don't just cancel it.
I think the best example was Black Panther and the Crew.
That was the best
Before
example.
issue 2 came out, Marvel canceled it.
Yeah. Because the pre-orders were so low for the final
Okay.
3, or for the next month or something like that. But basically nobody was like from the indication from comic book stores is nobody wanted to buy it. And so Marvel canceled it before it was even finished. Like, well, don't cancel it, just hand it over to somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, I use the example of the X-Men all the time. Like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Roy Thomas's X-Men sucked. And then Claremont got it, and then it was like this highest selling Marvel publication for 17 years.
Yep.
So, I mean, it just takes a different writer with a different approach in order to make a story good.
Yeah,
But,
definitely.
you know, I don't know. I mean, at that point, they're kind of looking at it from a business standpoint. But back onto the topic at hand. Yeah, I mean, I would take the younger heroes and I would train them, and I would basically have the story set up to where, you know, the reader reads these and it's like, okay, even if it's in 20 years or 25 years or 50 years, you know, they will replace the superheroes.
Right.
Or even if they don't, you have the feeling that they will.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea about
Without
about
being
how
a
we treat
carbon
them.
copy of the original superhero.
Yeah.
Like without feeling like you're just getting a replacement.
Yeah,
This
they
this
would have
is-
their own origins and
Yeah,
things
their
like
own
that. Yeah.
origin and their own strengths, their own weaknesses, all that. You know,
Yeah.
even in terms of storytelling, that it's its own thing. You know,
Yeah.
you don't feel like you're getting this cheap cop out. You know, or
Yeah.
this like, you know, off-brand, you know, hero.
Off-brand version.
Off-brand,
Yeah,
yeah.
I liked your
you
idea.
get the Target Captain
Yeah,
America,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Walmart Captain America.
Lieutenant America.
Oh man,
I liked your idea of making them like a Teen Titan. They kind of did that with the Champions, but the problem is Teen Titans and Champions are 2 totally different things. The Teen Titans are the sidekicks trying to break off on their own. The Champions is a group of kids who came together because they didn't like the way the Avengers were doing things.
yeah. I will say the direction Mark Waid took it was not the direction it should have gone in.
Right.
That should have been the fun book that was goofy and silly and all that kind
Which
of
is
stuff.
what Teen Titans has been for the most part.
Yeah.
While series at a time, it's managed to maintain like the attitude you wanted. While like I told you, I dropped off Champions when we had an entire issue where they went down to somewhere down south, found a racist cop, and instead of even doing anything, they decided to sit by and watch the people fight the racist cop.
Wait, what story was this?
That was the
Champions.
Champions, which is basically their version of the
Okay.
Teen Titans.
Oh, okay.
The charter of the Champions was, so like whenever the Avengers go into a town, like they fight some villain group, then the Avengers just leave. They're just like, okay, we're done here, and then just
All right,
leave.
see ya.
And then
Yeah,
whatever happens,
right.
happens. And the Champions are like, well, this should be cleanup. Like people are losing their houses. Like somebody has to help them pick up the pieces and move on. That was the basis of the Champions. Was to do what the Avengers do, but then take the next step and restore like humanity's faith in superheroes.
Right.
And then it turned into a political story, which I'm not necessarily against political stories. I do kind of like that idea.
Right.
But like when you have a bunch of young kids and like Cyclops is in love with Viv and she kisses the Hulk.
Right.
That was hilarious. Oh, dude, Cyclops is in love with the Vision's daughter.
Okay.
And like he wants her to be like his first real kiss. And like she's an android learning about things. And so like she's curious about kissing. And so like Cyclops shows up and like she kisses the Hulk.
Now throw politics in the middle of this.
Throw politics in the middle of all that. Yeah.
It,
Like it should be a coming of age story with just
Right.
young superheroes.
Yes,
That
well,
would
and that's
be
what Teen
cool.
Titans
Yeah.
is. Damian learning how to be a leader, even though he's only 13 or
Yeah.
well, he's 13, I think, at this point.
Yeah, he's
but
a
like,
teenager now,
You know, things
Yeah.
like that, like
Right.
just like as much as the Jackson High turn was against a lot of fans, him discovering that he's gay, that was like it's a story of him discovering this.
Jackson-
while
Aqualad.
Aqualad,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
there's people against it, and that's fine. You can have your opinions on the reboot of him. But anyway, what I'm saying is the story was about him discovering that and then fighting against his father and joining the Teen Titans.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of thing you want to see in your young
Right.
group of superheroes. You
Right.
don't want to see. All right, so we're going to sit here and watch you fix it
right.
Yeah.
while we have a love triangle.
I don't want a teen drama in my comic book.
Well, you're going to
Yeah.
get it
Yeah,
with the
like-
Titans and the Teen Titans, but there will be fighting.
But okay, but you'll get teen drama only
I know
in
Rob
so
doesn't read
far.
Titans, But the last
No, I read Titans.
Have you read the last 20 issue
No, I haven't
story?
read. No.
Okay, the last 20 issue story has built to a love triangle between 3 of the characters and who
no,
loves Donna Troy and
Yeah, it's Roy Harper and it's not Nightwing, is it? No, not Nightwing. Who's
No,
the
it's
other
Roy
one?
Harper. Who does Donna like though? Is it Wally? No. Donna likes someone else. Roy likes Donna. Now they
Yeah.
might get together though in issue 21.
Yeah. I know. There's a whole thing about Roy chasing after Donna.
Yeah.
like he dug her. They established
Right.
that in like the first story.
I love it was like issue 17 or whatever. They're like, Roy's like, I like you, Donna. She's like, no shit. Can we beat the villain?
Yeah. I thought it was hilarious when
Yeah.
what is it? When Red Hood went on a date with Artemis, and I was like, man, like Red Hood trying to get some of that, Amazonian action.
Wait, did you actually read it or did you just know that happened?
Well, I know that it happened, but I know that like the whole thing like ended up getting split up because of Bizarro. Didn't
Okay,
it?
no, there was no date.
Oh, there was
Artemis
a date.
staged it because she wanted to get Jason alone to talk about Bizarro.
Oh.
And Jason was confused.
See, I skimmed through it all. So okay.
Okay.
I thought they actually went on a date.
No. She
Oh.
brought him on a date and he was shocked about it. And it turns out
like, damn,
she
man.
wanted to talk about Bizarro without him snooping.
Like, man, Jason Todd gonna get some ass. Gonna get some action.
That's
I think if I remember correctly,
yeah.
they bring up like, what would happen if this was a real date? You know,
Dude, that would have been a
But-
hilarious caption.
right.
Like Red Hood and the Outlaws, issue number whatever, like Jason Todd gets some ass.
I was just gonna say that's the Oh,
That'd be hilarious.
Oh, Jason Todd gets some ass.
Get some ass.
That's the name of that's the story.
AY.
3-issue arc.
That would be hilarious.
Amazonian ass.
But no, I mean you'll get teenage drama, but it's teenage drama insofar as like we're teenagers and like our hormones
Right.
are raging.
Yeah.
And all that kind of that's the kind of thing that
Yeah,
you would
heroes
get,
have personal lives.
Yeah, our personal lives.
You got to
See-
dive into that once in a while.
See, that's why Claremont's X-Men worked, because he
Right.
wrote it as a soap opera instead of like a traditional superhero story. So you had love triangles, and you had members who quit and came back, and you had all these things that went on, but it was focusing more on the developing of the characters more so than fighting. There were fights that were there,
Yeah.
but it was just developing the characters more so than anything else. And it was
Right.
cool because they had their own religious backgrounds and so on and so forth, and it worked for what it was. But that's what I kind of feel like Marvel lacks to a degree. I mean, it's cool to have stories that are political, and I love political stories just as much as anybody else. But even I have to admit that at this point right now, a year ago, I think it wasn't as bad. Maybe even 6 months ago, it wasn't as bad. But I think that right now, it's a little heavy-handed. Like every story is a political story.
Right.
My
You
biggest
just get
argument.
exhausted after a while.
It does.
My biggest argument
exhausted.
against, because I agree with you, I do like them. My problem with the political stories and the agenda stories and all this stuff that's going on, right? I don't have no problems with them, but my problem is it's still a comic. So eventually, in the exact argument I had with Secret Empire, because you were like, oh, Benny just wants to see people punching. I want to see a payoff for the argument. I want to see the superhero part come out.
Yeah, the ending, okay. Everything until the ending of Secret Empire was amazing, I think. And then the ending was using a cosmic cube.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like
Like, that
I
was-
want the payoff to be worth it. You can give me, like the Wakanda thing. It's a great example. Black Panther has a ton of issues of politics and arguing and discussing the whole thing. But it pays off with a war. Like
Yeah.
it leads to something. And
Yeah.
that's been my biggest
Right.
problem with all of the comics that are like super politically charged, like that Champions book. Like, I don't want you to just give me politics. I'm reading comics to get away from all this crap. So you want to put them in there, that's fine, but we need to eventually have the superheroes fighting. We need to have
Right.
somebody arguing. There needs to be a villain. There needs to be someone behind it. That Champions issue where they went against the racist cop, I felt like I was Gwenpool, because Gwenpool was a character who was in that book, and she's like, it has to be Hydra. It has to be someone behind the scenes. It has to be a villain orchestrating this. And I feel like if you had just put in a villain, boom, still a superhero book.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But by removing that, we're not having a superhero book. You're using a superhero book
It's
to just...
social commentary.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole thing is just social commentary.
And there's
yeah.
dozens of other platforms for that.
Yeah.
Like, comics shouldn't be only about that. It needs to be peppered in, like classic X-Men did it.
But that's-
classic X-Men did a great job of social commentary in the middle of an actual plot.
I mean,
But-
half of the X-Men was just a debate on like evolution versus,
Oh,
like,
oh,
And then
dude.
the other half of the
and-
X-Men was a debate about racism.
No, dude,
Yeah.
okay. There's a really
Exactly.
good story that Chris Claremont wrote called God Loves, Man Kills. All right, and so you've got this religious fundamentalist named William Stryker who believes it's his mission from God to kill mutants. Now, the cool thing was that Claremont could have taken that in a direction where it just turned out to be a fight between the Purifiers and the X-Men, and they did. The Purifiers were
Okay.
like the followers of
Okay.
William Stryker.
Yeah.
But the ending of the whole story came in a debate on national television between Cyclops and William Stryker.
Okay.
And the idea was, like William Stryker took the idea that God made man. He says, well, if God made man, then mutants are just the next stage of man. So either you're saying God made a mistake, or that God's infallible and never makes mistakes. In which case, we are here because God wants us here. And like he basically backed him into a corner, and then William Stryker pulled a gun and he was arrested. But it was cool because it was a political story. Like it was the only story in the history of Marvel Comics where like they dropped the N-bomb, for example, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, it was huge. Yeah. But it was designed to be a political story. But the politics of the story had a point. That was the whole basis behind it. It was drawing the parallel of like real world issues and struggles combined with like the X-Men. Like I would say it's probably one of the most important stories. And that's why I say politics aren't necessarily bad, especially if it's done in a way where the story is entertaining.
Green Arrow's a great way. I know I don't know.
I am not current on Green Arrow.
But Green Arrow, whenever done properly, has always been a political story, but about the Green Arrow. Like, and he's always fighting social commentary, but as Green Arrow. Like we don't. And I don't normally want to give credit to the Twitch chat when we're doing this because we're trying to make a YouTube video here, but they're the ones that mentioned it, and I agree with that. Green Arrow is a great way to do social commentary and have it about a superhero at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, that is...
Yeah, the whole underground slave trading thing.
Yeah. And the Ninth Circle right now, the big plot that's going on at the current moment of it, and them trying to change Seattle into Star City.
No, I thought the Ninth Circle was defeated.
No, not yet.
Then what was the one
they were defeated, and then we discovered they're in every city, and currently he's traveling around.
So it's like its own court of owls?
Yeah. That's what Hard Traveled Hero was all about. He went to all the cities.
Okay.
So unless that resolved it, and I don't remember if it beat it. I don't think he beat him, though.
I haven't read Hard Traveling Hero yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was because I thought the Ninth Circle was defeated in the story before they ended up on the island where the husband and wife were bickering and were enemies.
Yeah.
And then fell in love and kicked them out.
They were defeated, and they discovered that behind the scenes, Moira Queen is actually in charge of the Ninth Circle, and they're actually implemented in every city.
Holy shit.
Yeah, you're a little behind.
Dude, I need to get caught up.
That's like 8 issues ago that reveal came out.
Dude, I feel like that's the biggest change that DC made. And I feel like that's one of the best things they've done. Previously, DC, like, it was almost like they took all their effort and put it on, like, all the best titles. Like Scott Snyder writes Batman, and whoever's writing Superman, and so on and so forth, Action Comics, like, all their best talent goes there. And then all the other stories, like Aquaman and Green Arrow and so on, are just, like, whoever's left. But, like, every single comic they have is, for the most part, like, hitting every mark.
You mentioned Aquaman. Have you read Aquaman?
Yes, I've read Aquaman.
Okay, he just went to war.
No, I'm talking about New 52 Aquaman.
Oh,
when they kicked that off. Yeah, I probably should have clarified.
I was going to say, Aquaman Rebirth is amazing.
Yeah, Aquaman Rebirth is fucking nuts, man. Yeah, that shit's badass.
He's at war. Like, they removed the crown because Atlantis doesn't ever want him to merge with the mainland. Another social commentary book. Talking about merging two civilizations and stuff like that. Yeah. But they don't want to, and they finally just dethroned him.
Yeah.
And so he's fighting to get the crown back.
It's badass. Like the Aquaman the Aquaman story is nuts. No, I'm not talking about Rebirth Aquaman. I'm talking about New 52 Aquaman.
That one started good, and then he just when Jeff Johns left, it was just kind of like he didn't pass his notes on to the next guy.
Yeah.
It was like, hey Gary, I've been writing Aquaman for 12 issues. You're gonna take over, and you're like, well, can I have your? No. These are my notes.
Have a good day. Have a good day.
Yeah, you can't copy me. No, I firmly believe Jeff Johns has no notes. He's just like, this sounds like it's going to be good, and it's fucking good. I don't know. Guy just writes magic. I have no idea. But yeah, no, I think those are a couple of the things that Marvel's kind of lacking at the moment. I think is one, cohesiveness in their universe, so you don't feel like you're reading a cohesive Marvel universe. It's just stories involving Marvel characters. Two, there doesn't really seem to be like any shared direction among all the writers. Like everybody should be moving to this one particular goal. And because of that, it kind of takes away from like any real point or purpose with regards to like what Marvel's doing at the moment. It's just a whole bunch of stories that are out there.
Yeah, which doesn't work so well for a modern audience.
It does. It really doesn't.
No. Everybody wants everything connected. I mean, the MCU is a testament to that.
It is. That's why I think DC Rebirth is so successful, because there's stories that you can read in DC where, like, what was it, the I Am Gotham one, where he's on like the plane trying to keep the plane from crashing.
Yep.
And they're like, why don't you call the Justice League? And he's like, no.
They're busy.
Yeah, they're busy. No, he said he did try to call him, I think.
I know, he tried to call Superman. Superman was off-world.
Yeah, he was off-world, yeah.
He was going to die. He was riding a plane down. I mean, that's typical, right? You're just like,
whee! Yeah. But it's that kind of thing. Like, well, why don't you contact this character? Why don't you contact that character? Like, why don't you get the Justice League involved? And things like that. They reference what other characters are doing. If you go through and you read, like, if you go through in the chronological order of things, every ounce of it matches up perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, Superman doesn't show up in a Batman story
not
because
perfectly.
he's on Dinosaur Island.
It's not perfect, but a lot of times they'll answer where it goes.
Well, Dark Knight's Metal is one of the examples.
Yeah, because that's throwing everything out of whack as to where everything fits in around that.
Yeah. Right. But, like, they'll sort it all out, once it's
just
done.
like Justice League, the Hitch run did not make sense with everything else.
Yeah, I skipped it. Like I was like, man, maybe I should go back and cover this, and I'm just like,
I covered it. It's
No.
not bad if you look at it as its own inclusive story.
yeah,
with
but
no
I
one
mean,
else.
but that's the thing. I don't want to have to cover the entirety of Ryan Hitch's run and remind people every single time it's in its own thing. Like I just want to cover what it like with Christopher Priest's run.
Yeah.
You know, like Justice Lost and all that kind of stuff.
So, okay, so we're going to wrap up here because it's been going for a while. We've discussed everything from what Marvel, our opinion, have done wrong, what DC did right, how we would reboot Marvel. I don't think that was as in-depth as I'd like. So, what I do want to do for the comments down here on the YouTube video, let us know ideas for what theory crafting you want us to do next. Because I think we need to have a more direct idea for our theory crafting.
It's certainly not an on-the-spot topic.
Which is Batman
It's
worked
so
well
big.
because rebooting Marvel may have been too large of a
Yeah,
scope.
we could let our imaginations run wild on Batman. Which Gary, I still fucking love your idea that like everyone, like Alfred helps everyone, but no one helps Alfred. The saddest shit that I've
That's what
ever
I'm
heard,
saying.
man.
Like we can. I think we need
So
for our
sad.
theory
He
crafting
gets
to
his
work.
own issue, a one-off issue.
I hope you guys enjoyed what I'm going to
so
consider
tragic.
the ultimate tangent episode of RnBe.
Yeah.
'Cause we talked about everything here.
We did.
Yes.
We really
Yeah.
did. Yeah, we were all over
Yeah.
the place.
But don't forget, you can find Rob over at his channel, Comics Explained, on Twitter at Comics Explained. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, then you know that I am Comicstorian and this is my channel. And this is Gary. You can find him here. It's pretty much it. Oh, and at Gary
On Twitter.
Camp4.
Gary
Yeah.
Camp4.
I'll
Gary
remember.
Camp4.
It's just,
Yeah.
Yes,
it's funnier
it's
if I'm
okay.
like,
Yeah.
he's here. That's.
He has a Twitter account. Don't know what it is. But he has one. Just search Gary
look
on
for it.
Twitter.
And if you're watching us on Twitch or want to watch us on Twitch, we film these every Thursday morning. You can come check it out live over there. And if you're on Twitch right now, we're going to be answering some questions and setting up for a short episode to take place while Rob and I are at Emerald City Comic Con.
Yeah.
So don't forget, if you are in Seattle, go hang out with us at Emerald City Comic Con. And next week, when this episode goes live, we'll have a shorter one talking about the weirdest what ifs in Marvel. Thank
Yeah.
you and have a good night.
Yeah.